So we're getting ready to start the Build a Better Book webinar on Build a Better Book as a course elective. And we are happy to have Rachel Brockman from the Hewitt-Trussville Middle School in Alabama. Rachel is the librarian at the school and has really done a groundbreaking work as far as pushing Build a Better Book forward into having it not just be smaller sessions, but actually having it be a full, was it a year-long course elective in her middle school, and working in curriculum as well. So Rachel, please go ahead. Thank you.
All right, thank you. It's good to see you guys. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with all of you. And there is a chat feature. If you hover on the screen, there's a chat feature that you can turn on. And if you have questions, we were discussing this kind of before we started. If you have questions and you want to type them in the chat, Gigi and Stacy and Kat, y'all can keep an eye on it for me.
Yeah.
And we'll try and get all those questions answered. But yeah, so let's see, let me present for you real quick. And can all of you see my screen okay? You can, good.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, I am part of the 2019 cohort that went through Build a Better Book in Boulder, Colorado. My district technology coordinator and I came together, and we both did programming when we got back home. I went ahead and worked toward building a class elective for my middle school, and she did some smaller sessions and some like, I guess, trimester sessions with students. So it was neat to kind of dig into a longer time with them. My name is Rachel. Guys, my contact information is all here. I really hope that when we're done today, if any of you guys decide to go ahead and do an elective or do any programming similar to this, I would love to stay connected to you because I would love some folks to bounce ideas off of. Can we make this presentation available to them when we're done?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we can post this on our website along with the recording.
That's fantastic. So here's kind of the topics for today. The first two are kind of the behind the scenes, kind of the building the foundation for making it even possible to do a course in a school built around Build a Better Book. And then the last three is kind of where the rubber meets the road. Those last three topics are going to be where we're talking about what we're doing with students, like what we did here every day throughout the school year. None of this is like linear. I kind of flowed in and out of a lot of these things throughout the year. So it's linear in the PowerPoint, but just know that in real life, none of it's linear, that it was all very fluid. So building a plan, I've created a pacing guide for you guys. I'm going to jump to that slide real quick. And it's two pages long. I know when I left Build a Better Book, the workshop last year, it took a minute to wrap my brain around how do I want to structure my year? How do I want to structure my weeks? And so I immediately created a document similar to this to kind of help me to start laying out what I thought it might look like. And I'm hoping that once we finish this today, that a document like this and seeing what we did throughout the year, this might be helpful for you in that same process. But yeah, that is linked in the PowerPoint right here. So that document's available, and it should make an auto copy for you. If you have a Google Doc account, it should auto make a copy of that for you that you're welcome to use and change and share whatever you'd like to do with it. But yeah, let's see, pacing guide. As far as organization, this is my classroom, and I say classroom, this is the part of the library. The main reason I wanted to share it with you is you don't have to have a particular type of space in order to do this kind of work. If you have space, you can do it. This space, those tables moved, I don't even know how many times throughout the year. We kept that very fluid depending on what type of project we were working on at the time. But if you got a space, you can get this done in a school setting. This was my organization for my materials. Again, it's nothing very fancy, but it kind of was a holding place. We would have days in the school year that we would stop, and it was a straighten up the materials section day, and everybody had an assignment, and they'd go over there and they'd organize the materials. That was one of our, I would say, one of our biggest challenges was keeping all the materials that we use throughout the year kind of organized. Yeah, blocking some time out for yourself and your students to do that, to spend time to go in and straighten up every once in a while. Just it's helpful. I have to be organized. I can't handle it if it's not. And then it took me a while to figure out how am I going to store my students' projects. And so we came up with the idea of possibly pizza boxes might be a good way to store these, especially in a space like the library where people are in and out all the time. We have a trampoline kind of party place in Trussville called Urban Air. And on Facebook, we have a little city page. And I just put a request out there as a teacher saying, hey, this is the work that my students are going to be doing with Build a Better Book. We are looking for some pizza boxes. Could anybody donate some? And Urban Air not only donated the pizza boxes, but tickets for my kids to go to the trampoline park too. So shout out to Urban Air. Yeah. And then funding, certainly a piece you have to kind of think about when you're planning. We tackled funding for this class in two separate ways. I wrote a MUSH grant, which is a grant through our district's foundation that was awarded and around $900. And then we also had, we have like registration fees for different electives for our students that sign up each year. And so they assigned I believe it was a $20 elective fee that students can elect to donate toward the class. Students are not required to do that in our district, but they can if they want to, if their family can. And usually most of our families try to do that. So that's how our school tackled that. Just know that if you're going to approach your administration wanting to start an elective, funding's going to have to be part of that conversation. So be thinking about maybe some grants or other ways that you could get funding for your elective. The second piece that was really important for me to have this be successful was my team, like the people that I worked with, and making sure that I had those folks in my corner. And I started with my principal, and that's Jennifer Abney that's there with me. She's absolutely fabulous. I have linked a pitch meeting sheet in the PowerPoint, and I think it's toward the end, guys, it is. But it's linked in there just to kind of jot your ideas down before you go into that office to make a pitch, because most of them don't know what Build a Better Book is. So if you kind of have that fleshed out, like what's our purpose? What are we hoping to accomplish with this course? What standards, you have to speak your administrator's language. What standards are we going to cover in this course? Where is it going to happen? What groups is this going to be available for? If you can have all that fleshed out before you go talk to your administrator, your meeting's probably going to go a whole lot better. So just know that that document is linked in there. It'll auto copy for you. Please do with it whatever you wish. It's there. You want to get in very good with your district's technology department. These folks have been wonderful for me this year. Our district has kind of a bank of different tools that any teacher in our district can check out and use in their classroom. And so just knowing what your district has available and taking advantage of that and taking advantage of the skill set that you have in your technology department, you definitely want to let them know what you're planning, what you're doing. There were several times I had some of those guys show up in class, like just to be there in class. They wanted to be part of it. So yeah, your technology department, you want to get on your side. Your exceptional education department. This is sweet Ann Goins right there. She wrote a separate grant for materials that were going to be used in my class. So this wasn't even for her, but she bought in. And when you're able to build those relationships and let them know, okay, I'm a librarian. You're exceptional ed. You've got the skill set to really, really support these kids, but I want to use my skill set as a STEM teacher to support what you're doing. You can draw people in and help you with things like funding. So she was critical to me in a lot of different ways this year. And then if you have some relationships with high schools in your district, I know that we have got a shop class up at our high school. We also have an engineering department up at our high school. And they have tools up there that we do not have at our disposal at the middle school. So again, just getting those relationships in place. I know a lot of school settings, like I think of Building 61 in Boulder, oh my gosh, the tools that you guys have at your disposal. It's just amazing. A lot of schools don't have those tools. And so you have to reach out in your community and reach out in your school district to find out who's got them so that you can take advantage of them too. And your faculty, my faculty was wonderful this year when we let them know the kind of projects that we were working on. We have students in our building who are blind and who are visually impaired. And this was the first time our middle school has had students coming through with those challenges. And so having conversations with them, okay, well, what do you need? What curriculum do you have coming up that you feel like we need a tactile piece for this? We need a tactile learning piece. So constant conversations with your faculty about those needs can really help guide and drive your class. So definitely be very loud and proud with what you're doing with your elective if you choose to do that. And then certainly your community is a wonderful resource too. The Alabama School for the Deaf and Blind in Alabama, I've got a wonderful contact there. She came and did a wonderful session with my kids about different job opportunities that are available for people who are interested in working with the visually impaired. So those kind of connections you can really capitalize on as well. So yeah, build your team for sure. Foundation infrastructure stuff. Do y'all have any questions about how I did any of that? Are we good to move on? Kind of want this to be, I want to talk with you guys.
I think some of those planning sheets that you shared, Rachel, will be really helpful to have on the website. Thanks so much for putting those together, because I think especially for teachers thinking about how they might approach a principal or a leader in their school or district to kind of provide a little guidance for how they might think about the project and how it's going to look in their space is really critical.
And they love it when you have all the questions answered before you come in. That's
Yeah.
that's the fewer problems they have to work out that you've already kind of thought about ahead of time. It's helpful for them.
Hey, Rachel, would you mind going back to where you had all your stuff? You said I have to be organized, and just tell us what supplies, what kind of, like a minute review of all the supplies you use. That'd be great.
And this, really, this is going to be different for you. It's going to be different for everyone in your situation. Sure. We used a lot of craft materials. A lot of schools are blessed with a lot of digital material. I mean, we were a blend. But I will say the things that we ended up using the most this year, foam. I don't know if you can see right here. It looks like construction. Yeah. This looks like a stack of construction paper. It's actually foam sheets. We use those in the Cricut a lot to get smooth edges, especially for like when we're doing lettering and things like that. And you'll get to see some of that later. Okay. Textured papers, like right over here, we used a lot. A heavier stock paper for brailing when you're using your slate and stylus. We used a lot of that paper this year. We used a lot of, up here, see right up here, these are called Doodle 3D pens.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of 3D pens on the market. I particularly like these. They use a little bit cooler temperature. So working with kids, the Doodle 3D pen is just a cooler temperature, and you don't have to worry about students burning themselves. But we used a lot of 3D filament with these pens this year. So that was used a lot. A lot of rubber cement this year. What else? And then we used, and I may try to look for some other ways to do this. There's some Braille tape. It's clear, that comes on a spool that you can purchase. And my kids used that Braille tape for some of their projects, and we struggled with keeping it adhered to the project. So we're going to investigate some other ways to get that done this year. There's a lot of problem solving, like you get to do that as a group. And that to me is one of the most, I don't know, like my kids' takeaways when we kind of debriefed at the end of the school year. That was one of the things they talked about, was how much problem solving we did.
I bet. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, really quick, I have found that Braille tape, it tends to be pretty stiff. Yes. But we've found larger, like clear stickers work well, because then you're brailing into like a plastic, because it's a stick, it's like a,
they're almost like the size of address labels.
Yeah, they're the size of address labels, or sometimes we have a little bigger, like the size of like a name tag or something, and then we can braille into that, and then it becomes more of a raised, like plasticky surface than a
it's very rigid. It is rigid, and
yeah, the tape is really tough.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel nice.
Right.
I know.
Anyway.
But, yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry, John. Did you have a question?
Oh no, I was just curious. Is that yarn, or what is that? Rachel?
We used pipe cleaners this year.
There. Oh, okay.
Yeah, right
yarn
here.
Yarn would be good too, though.
Yarn is definitely good. Stuffed animals. If you can get your hands on stuffed animals and cut them apart and all their fur. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Like if you go to a thrift store, buy as many stuffed animals as you can.
I would have never thought about that.
There's some great textures.
That is probably a good way to get that fuzzy texture rather than having to go to like Joann's or something.
They sell them for nothing.
Right.
Felt. We used a lot of felt. Leathers, like leather textures. And then these brads, you're going to see these brads show up later on in our projects. We use those when we were doing wiring for Makey and coding.
Thank you so much.
And hot glue, low temperature.
Hot glue, yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Glue guns.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hot glue guns. You got it.
Yep.
Yeah. Good.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. I'm sorry, y'all. We're just gonna have a quick review, right? All right. So this is where you get to the good stuff. This is like where you're working with your kids. And like I remember leaving Build a Better Book last year, and it was such a whirlwind, and we experienced so much so very, very quickly. And translating that into the classroom, one of my favorite things about it is that you could just like slow everything way down and just dig deep into each piece of it, and not feel rushed. And in a lot of like the message boards, and a lot of conversations, I just remember a lot of folks talking about, we have projects that didn't get finished. We didn't have time to finish them. Having a whole school year where you can just breathe and redesign, it's just good stuff. So yes, we dug into building empathy a lot. This was linear. This is where I started with my kids. I wanted to build their empathy to really have a head space and a heart space in the right place to do this work. One way that we did that was through the written word. Before school started, I purchased a lot of novels for middle schoolers that featured main characters who had visual impairments or blindness. And I bought multiple copies of those. I entered them into our library catalog, and I put Build a Better Book as a search term on it. So one of the first things I had our students do was to check out a book on this list, this Build a Better Book list. And if y'all are interested in seeing that list, I have linked it up here for you inside the PowerPoint. So if you're looking for a bibliography of titles that you might want to consider, these are middle grade titles that for the most part. This is the list that we used, and I'm going to be looking to add to that list as time goes on. But the purpose of this was to have, I had our kids, as they read, jot down in their reading journal any aha moments that they had about how does your character interact with the world? What are strategies that they're having to use? What are tools they're having to use to interact with the world the way that we do every day? And it just, I think it opened their eyes a lot to putting yourself in those shoes and understanding the challenges and maybe how to meet some of those challenges for some of the students in our own building. Also, you really utilized the website for Build a Better Book. And guys, I would encourage you to really do that. There's some great resources on Build a Better Book's website, which I have linked inside the PowerPoint right here. There are great videos on, if you just need to define empathy, there's a great Sesame Street video for younger students that's on there. The page you're looking at right now, these are personal stories that are very inspiring that I shared with my students. And just kind of really put them in the right mindset before we began. And we definitely utilized our own students. And this, the young man you see standing is Owen, and he has given his permission for us to use his picture and use his story a little bit. But Owen is one of those new students for the middle school. And while he was not in my course, he was a regular visitor to our course. And he gave us a lot of great feedback. He was very curious about what we were doing. And like watching the interaction between him and my students, they were so eager. It was just, my students were very eager to get feedback from him. And I think having that authenticity of someone that this is who I'm making this for, and they're telling me how to make it better, was extremely powerful. Just getting a little, it was very powerful. Good stuff. So if you have access to students in your building, have that, pull them in and let them be a part. The next thing that I needed to do for and with my students was build capacity in them to do the work. So there's certainly some skills that they needed to do the projects that we were going to do together. And so one of the first things that we did was do a session of blind Pictionary, which is one of the things that we did during Build a Better Book in Colorado. And what was great, and in this picture you see Brody's guiding her hands to feel the picture and try and guess what it is. What was really great about this piece was that it led right into, like right afterwards, a conversation of why were you able to figure out what this was? Why were you not able to figure out what this was? And what does that mean for universal design? What does that mean for how we design for our student, for our visually impaired students? And so we had this brainstorm afterwards of what are the principles that are going to guide all the work that we do in this elective class together. And so these are kind of like this is the short list of what we came up with. And we also defined those a little more in detail. And I provided the link. The link right there gives you this list, but a second sheet also that has the more detailed definition for when you're going through and telling your kids, what each of these mean. I printed these out front and back, and I laminated them, and every child had a copy of this and kept it the whole school year. So this is what guided every project that we did. And when I did assessment in my rubrics, these were the things I was looking for in my students. And then we also did a commercially produced books for the visually impaired. We did a book evaluation after we created that list. So we bought several books, we sat down, and they had the list next to them, and they evaluated each of the books, how well they did each of these things. And it gave them a critical eye, and help them start thinking about, okay, when I design, this company didn't even get this right when they designed this. How am I going to do a better job with this? How could we have made this book better? You know, it's already a tactile book, but how could it have met these design principles? We also used Extraordinaires. This was not a tool I was familiar with until I went through Build a Better Book in Colorado. This tool is fantastic. You have your students work in small groups, and they're given a character, and they kind of examine the picture that character's in and try to figure out as much about that character and his life and his, I don't know, his needs as possible just by examining the picture. And then they're given a design challenge. So it may be, I know the one we did in Colorado, I had to design a shoe for a superhero. And so we had to kind of get into the nitty gritty of, okay, what does the superhero need in a great pump, right? And so this is a great tool to have the conversation of, okay, who are we designing for? And how do we keep that person in mind as we're doing our design? So all of these things were just, again, just laying the foundation for getting in the right headspace and heart space for our work. Also created a sheet of this for them. This was also laminated and stayed in their binders the whole year long. I do not know how many times we referred to this sheet throughout the school year. A lot. It was a lot. And we talked a lot about the engineering design process. Our projects, most of our projects, were not done in a one and done go. You know, and we would start our project, we would do a prototype for that project, we would evaluate it using a rubric that I would create. We'd go back, we'd redesign, and we'd do a final product. So kind of teaching them that process, this process kind of guided our work this year as well. We introduced the slate and stylus, and John, that was one thing that you couldn't see in that picture. I do have a box full of slate and stylus, and we used that paper I mentioned with the slate and stylus, and they started learning how to mirror. When you're brailing with a slate and stylus, you have to mirror and go backwards those letters. And for 7th graders, that was an interesting challenge for them. But when that moment that they got it, like it was the greatest aha moment for them. It was a lot of fun when they finally figured it out. So we did a lot of practice with this before we started any project work. We also introduced, we wanted them to see some of the real tools that folks with visual impairments use every day. So we introduced the Perkins Brailler, and had them get their hands on that to kind of learn how they type Braille. And that kind of inspired the first project that we did that you're going to see a little bit later. We made a Perkins Brailler alphabet book that you'll get to see in a moment. This is Aiden learning how to use the Perkins Brailler. We also had our kids create accounts in the website UEB online, and this is a screenshot that I took from inside that program. UEB online is almost like a trainer for using a Perkins Brailler. except the students use a keyboard. So if your students have access to a Chromebook, if they have access to a computer, they can go to this website and create an account and then get some practice kind of using the Perkins Brailler, which we did this a good bit before we started the project that I mentioned a moment ago. We also kind of started looking at illustrations and trying to start to break those down. Because if we were going to build a better book, we had to be able to look and kind of dissect, I suppose, an illustrator's depiction of what the text was trying to convey. And so we looked at layering. So I used this book, The Beetle Alphabet Book by Jerry Pallotta, and we used one illustration there. And we talked about, okay, so let's break this picture apart. If this were on like clear sheets of paper and every layer was on a different sheet, what is the layer that would be in the very, like the furthest away from us in the very back? And so getting them to critically start looking at illustrations helped them in recreating tactile illustrations. So that was an activity that we did together very early on. And then this was very fluid. This, as far as introducing tools, it was on an as-needed basis. So whatever project we were working on at that time that required a different technology tool, we learned those tools as we went. So you're looking at a Cricut and then a Makey, and there's that 3D doodler pen. Any questions about that? Just related to kind of how we set the headspace and the heart space for the work. Good. You ready to see projects? All right, so this is where we made the things. The very first project we tackled was a layering project. And I hate, like, one thing I loved about going through Build a Better Book was how hands-on everything we did was. And like, to show you a picture of this, it kind of breaks my heart a little bit because I want y'all to be able to put your hands on Noah's work here. But I bought a copy of the book, Put Me in the Zoo. And I committed the cardinal sin of completely cutting and butchering that book, completely cutting it apart, and made a 2-page spread for each student and gave it to them. And their job was to dissect that illustration, break it into layers. And we talked about how, you know, the thing doesn't have to be the thing. It doesn't have to look exactly the way the illustrator depicted it, but you need to convey the spirit of what the text on that page is trying to convey. So in Noah's work here, and again, I wish you could get your hands on it. This was his second go at creating this creature. His first attempt, he had created the creature, and it was great. And I had him put a blindfold on and put his hands on it. And what he realized when he was trying to touch it is that he couldn't tell the breaking place between the creature's body and his arm. He couldn't tell where the leg started. This was like a big blob right here when he touched it. And so, okay, we talked about, okay, how do we fix that? Using the layers that we just talked about, how do we fix that? And so then he went back and redesigned. And this, and if you could put your hands on it and feel it, you would feel this is a layer that's on the very top of his illustration. You can feel the arm separate. You can feel the leg separate. This arm is layered underneath the body right here. So he did a really nice job of starting to pick up the idea of layers. And then you see their first, this is the first brailing attempt that they did, first project this year. Super proud of that first little project they did. We did a gallery walk of this project. So what we did is we laid them out on tables, and students went to 3 different projects, and they used the design principles that we put together at the beginning of the school year. They blindfolded themselves and they evaluated each other's work. They did this anonymously, so there were no hurt feelings. We talked about how do we give feedback in a constructive way that's not hurtful. And then they provided feedback for each other on how to make each other's projects more effective at conveying whatever the illustration was trying to convey. This was done after the first go and before they made any changes for their second attempt. So gallery walks are really effective for students to give feedback to each other. The next project we tackled that I mentioned a little while ago was the Perkins alphabet book. And what we wanted this alphabet book to accomplish was to show, and Perkins Brailler's got 6 keys on it, to show on each page of the alphabet book which keys would be depressed in order to create the Braille letter. And so they had to first learn, okay, which keys do get depressed in order for me to create that. We examined regular alphabet books from several authors before they began this work. And then they started design. This was Hannah's first attempt at the Perkins alphabet book. When we went back the second time, we used the Cricut for the letters. We used the Cricut for the fingers on the Perkins Brailler at the bottom. And many of them selected to use the Cricut for their silhouette of whatever the object was as well. And here you see, this is a final sheet for letter B after we ran it through the Cricut. But this person chose to do theirs. They wanted to keep the craft feel for their Band-Aids, so they didn't use the Cricut for that. Which I had not used a Cricut. Y'all, there was a huge learning curve for me this year. I'll be honest and say there was a lot of learning I had to do while teaching this. We learned together, my kids and I, this year. And then this project probably was the largest project we tackled this year. And I think the most impactful project we tackled this year. This was tactile curriculum boxes. This project took us a total of about 3 months from start to finish. We began with our state's learning standards. So I pulled the learning standards for social studies and science for 6th grade. My students were 7th grade students, but we pulled those standards, and I had each of my students examine the standards and find one standard within social studies or science for 6th grade that they felt would require a tactile piece, a map, a model, something in order for it to be understood, that it would be very difficult to understand without having a tactile component. Once they selected it, we began research. We did our research online, we did our research in print, and we just tried to flesh out that topic as much as we could. And so they kind of went deep and wide here. We had not narrowed down at this point. They were just trying to find as much information about that topic as they could. Later, they narrowed it down to one aspect of the standard, and that's what their tactile box would focus on. I created a lot of rubrics throughout this project for them to kind of help guide their work. The rubric you're looking at right now was the Makey planning sheet. Here, they took their research and they created little clips, I suppose, that they were going to audio record. And then those recordings would be coded to different, what are they, brads, the copper brads inside their project using Makey. And so when the user touches the brad, it would play the audio while they're feeling the tactile piece inside the box. So rubrics and graphic organizers were really critical in helping guide my students through the work. They used the craft materials to create the tactile piece inside their boxes. The box that you're looking at right there, that is a Dell Chromebook box. Our district purchased some new Dell Chromebooks. And again, that relationship with your technology department, right? I begged for the boxes and they gave them to me. But that is what each of the projects were housed in. Here you see Caitlin, she is recording her audio inside Scratch. Scratch is a block programming tool that's online, that's free, and that's the coding tool that my students used for this work. We had to learn how to use Makey. I think this was probably the highlight of the year, I think, for a lot of my students. We did some mini projects within this as they learned about Makey, kind of just to prepare them for how to wire, how to get it to do the job it needed to do in order to convey the content out of their content boxes when they were ready for that. So there you see Caitlin, she is wiring hers. I kind of wish I had a picture of the back of her project for you right there, so you could see the different wires running from the brads. Her project was about phases of the moon, which would be very difficult to teach without a tactile piece. And when you touch each of her brads, she talked about what the phase looked like its shape, and talked about how it was created. So she did a really great job with that. And then I put one box together with the computer showing the coding, just so you could kind of see it all, the whole project put together. This was Hannah's project. She tackled deforestation and included a graph and a map and a tactile key, so that when they felt the map, they could see where in the Western Hemisphere deforestation was happening the most. And there are a couple of my kids with their final projects. 3 months, three months from start to finish. A lot of work went into this. Those are now entered into our library automation program. Kids or teachers can come and check these out from the library. Next project we tackled was with the PIAF machine, and we won our PIAF machine in one of the MUSH grants that I mentioned earlier. Our building didn't have one before that. But the PIAF uses a special type of swell paper that when the black ink is on it, when you print on it, anything that's the color black on this particular type of paper, the paper will swell only in the black areas. And so it's a really quick way of taking an image and making it tactile. So my students, again, dug into standards, and then they went and did interviews with teachers. So they sat down with classroom teachers and said, okay, what are y'all working on right now? What do you need? What does your student need to understand what you're trying to teach right now? And then we came back and we started searching images. And we learned how to edit images to simplify them. A lot of these images had text on them. And so we learned how to edit those images together. And then they submitted them. And you're gonna notice from this point, you're not gonna see any more pictures of students. When we started this project, that was March 13th. That was the day that we all went home, right? So, so the pictures you're gonna see from here on out is all work that my students turned into me virtually. So this was turned in, and you'll see my kit. This is my dining room table that you see behind it, y'all. So yeah, we were working from home. But you'll notice the barcode, the library barcode on each of those. My students' work is all entered in and ready to check out this year to help teach. And this is how they're going to be stored in the library. And then the final project they did for me this year was in Tinkercad. Tinkercad is a great program for 3D design. And again, Ms. Brockman got to do a lot of learning along with my students this year. We started off by using some of their tutorials. And when I say we, I was right there with them. I used the tutorials too. We learned together. But those tutorials kind of put them in a place where they could create the shapes, manipulate the shapes, edit the shapes and colors. And then I assigned them a class, like the whole class, we were assigned the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. And their assignment was to create a tactile piece of the 3 Billy Goats that could be used in conjunction with the book. And so there's some of my students' work. And given that we couldn't be in the room with each other to tackle some of the challenges that they had with Tinkercad, I was very, very proud of the work that they did in Tinkercad. Again, working with my technology department, we had my kids, they voted on what they thought was the top the top 3 Billy Goats, right, that met our design qualities. And we sent that file to our technology department. And y'all, this picture's awful. It was taken from a video that, so y'all know videos, like screenshots taken from video are not always great, but my tech department did a time-lapse video of those 3 Billy Goats being printed, and we were able to drop it in Google Classroom. So even though they weren't at school, they were able to still see the final product being created. And yeah, those are the projects that got us through our school year together. Do you have any questions about our projects?
Amazing.
I just think it's so cool how your students' projects are now integrated into the library and can get checked out. It's just such an accomplishment for the students to be able to see their work, now being used by others. And that's so powerful.
The authenticity piece,
right.
I think is what, so many times I think kids are asked to do things for us that don't have the ring of authenticity to it. And I think the level of work, the quality of work that I got with them knowing that this was actually going to be utilized by people that needed it, had a huge impact on what they brought to class every day. This last little piece I've got, there's a link inside here for you. This is the pitch meeting sheet. Those pieces that we mentioned earlier that you kind of want to have fleshed out in your mind if you want to approach your principal for an elective course. And I didn't even ask, does everyone here, are you all familiar with Build a Better Book? Do you know the good work that they do? Do we have anybody here that isn't familiar with the work that they do?
And feel free to unmute yourself and
yes,
join
please.
in. Don't feel restricted by the chat.
Well, y'all must know then. That's good stuff. So yeah, again, take advantage, share, change, whatever you need to do with that. I have created a Facebook page for anybody who's interested in doing a course elective. I've called it Build a Better Book Course Elective Think Tank. I would just love a place where we could talk together and kind of work through like the challenges that we kind of ran into this year. I was fortunate to have my cohort from last year, took advantage of some of my relationships with them to troubleshoot some things. But I would love to grow, especially when you're tackling a whole school year, love to grow a group of folks we could help each other with that a little bit. And then I already use, and I think most of us and Build a Better already use the hashtag in Twitter, Build a Better Book. I always love it when my feed pulls up something that has that hashtag. I always look forward to seeing the work that my colleagues are doing. with Build a Better Book. So definitely throw that hashtag in there if y'all are showing off anything. And yeah, that's all I've got for you guys.
Rachel, could you comment very briefly on how you got kids started on Makeys? Did you use the videos from the Makey?
Yeah, so we use Google Classroom is the platform that the digital platform that we use. And we housed, my gracious, any document, any video, any links to a lot of those websites that I mentioned. We housed all of that in Google Classroom, so my students would be able to go back to those tools. So yes, we did use videos from their website. We also just had one day that I just told them, I just want you to experiment and see what you can figure out about it. And then once they experimented, we sat down and who has something that you figured out that you want to share? And so it kind of turned them into the experts pretty quickly. And so we kind of pooled our knowledge together about what Makey was capable of. And then on Makey's website, they have a lot of wonderful beginning projects that you can do. And we did, and I don't know if I included that picture or not. We did them making a joystick and using it to play online games. We had a day like they had to create their joystick, wire it up, and then I gave them a little time to experiment with that, doing some gaming. So once they did those two activities, just explored them a little bit, they were positioned pretty well to do the wiring for the boxes. None of them had ever used a wire stripper before. That was good fun. They thought they were the stuff using the wire strippers.
It's fun.
It is fun. It's great fun.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I have a question. So
yes.
A lot of us having to kind of separate the shared materials this coming school year. How do you guys feel about approaching this project? I mean, is it going to be like more of an individual type project where you give them a set amount of materials or what? I think that's we can't share stuff.
Right. Helen, you were asking the winning question right now. Like that is what I've spent my summer trying to wrap my brain around. We, at this point, like speaking for my personal situation, I believe that we are having electives in my school. So that means I will have my class. We don't have a roster yet, so I don't know how many students I'm dealing with at this point. But what I am envisioning for us is having packets that I check out to them, so like a kit almost of materials that will be their kit of materials that they use throughout the school year. So last year, we had a big bin that had all the scissors in it, and everybody used all the scissors all the time. So we will not be able to do that this year. So what I'm envisioning is a tub for each student, and making sure each student has their own copy of every, so their own slate and stylus, their own wire strippers. So it will involve some purchases, but it will, help keep everybody safe. Yeah. Yeah. If I have any virtual students, which there's a good chance of that, my district is giving students choice there. And so if I have any virtual students, what I plan on doing is checking that kit out to them. They'll keep it at home and just do their work from home. That was a great question.
Yeah, and I'm planning on doing the same thing. A $150 kit that we'll have a Makey, a bit booster, all this kind of stuff in it. And then we might do a little bit of face-to-face, but a lot of it will be virtual. So, yeah.
John, how many students do you work with?
In the engineering class, there's going to be 20 students, and then I have other graduate classes. But yeah, so
yeah, we all need to keep in touch this year.
Yeah. I just loved your projects. This just gives me such a great conception of how to approach this. Just so good.
Thank you. You're sweet.
And what I'd like to do, I love the idea of when the students interviewed the teachers, I think I'll have my students do the same thing. And I'd like to broaden it from blind and low vision to different types of learning differences. And I'm not sure how quite to do that, but I think interviewing the teachers and then talking to some students, you know, little kids, because it's all elementary based. So I think, any thoughts on that? How to broaden?
We've had several projects that have taken different clients as their, or different disabilities as their clients. And I think it's worked out really well, especially if you can find those people to interview. I mean, it's gonna be hard to bring them in this year, but if you can find those people to really communicate with and get their perspective, it's really helpful.
One project that worked really well at a partner high school of ours here in Colorado, they did this as a kind of incoming summer STEM program for incoming freshmen, high school freshmen. And they worked with their special education department within the district to essentially develop kind of profiles of real students that the district worked with. So it was all anonymous, but each group of incoming STEM students essentially received a card for a client. So again, they didn't know who it was, but it had just kind of a list of that child's learning abilities, essentially. Some were deaf, some had visual impairments, some had other physical issues that might have limited mobility. And so they had kind of like an index card size profile about their client. And then they also randomly received a game, like a common board game, like Apples to Apples or Sorry, or, you know, different games. And then their job as a team was to kind of think about how that game would work for a student with that, you know, with those challenges, and how they might make the game more accessible for their client. And I think it worked really well. And we've had a lot of work and a lot of success with other programs too around games. It's been a really fun kind of design task for kids and college students to work on. So, but that was kind of a nice way where they worked on a whole range of different clients and had to think about what that would entail. And then they also had specialists from the department, from the special education department, come in to kind of meet with the groups and really give them a little bit more information about you know, how they're like, they would kind of review the early prototypes and say, okay, well, you might not be considering this other piece that they, you know, so.
That's great. Thank you so much.
And I noticed there's a question in the chat, could it be run as an after school club instead of an elective? And I think the answer is definitely yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and in fact, most of our BBB programs have been run as kind of shorter interventions, either like a summer camp or maybe like a month or 6-week long after school club type of program. Rachel's just an overachiever, and she did this incredible program last year which really gave her a lot of, you know, as she mentioned, just time to work and iterate with the students on their projects, which I think is so valuable. I think that's one of the things we always run into, you know, working in the shorter term programs is, you know, you want to really provide a lot of foundation to kind of get kids in that mindset and giving them a better understanding of who they're designing for. And that, but it's just, it's a lot to kind of work in like an initial prototype and then, you know, testing and reiterating on that design. So it's been really exciting for us to see this. You know, we hadn't envisioned this as a whole course elective, so it was kind of amazing to watch Rachel and her team kind of try this out in Alabama to see what the kids could make. And the standards boxes, I just think, are such a neat idea for the teachers to now be able to check out and use with their students. So really
I know that the person that I traveled with, April Chamberlain, I guess the format that she was using at the elementary school was a trimester enrichment that they did during the school day, so that like one day a week they would have a block of time for the whole school that they did different enrichments, and the one that she went to the school and ran was Build a Better Book. There's so many different models that people are running. It is exciting to watch.
And Rachel will be presenting next week.
April.
Yeah,
April.
Next week on her projects.
And also on her, how she transitioned what she was doing in the physical space to remote learning. So that might be of interest too.
Hybrid settings are.
Y'all, she's fabulous.
She is also amazing. Yeah, she has done a lot of different things, including another kind of iteration of the game idea. She worked on a board game project with the elementary students that Rachel was just mentioning as an enrichment program. Well, I think we're at time, but I would definitely encourage any of you who are interested in the project either to sign up on our website so that you get more information. We also have a listserv that is used not a whole lot, but actually it's been really helpful when people have questions or when they come across a really great resource that they've found to be useful. They kind of shoot it out to the network and hear back from others that are working on Build a Better Book projects. So if you're interested in having us add you to the list, please just let Gigi know or sign up on our website and we can add you to that so that you can be connected with some of the other members of the network.
Sorry, I was going to mention that we love adding more stuff to our website. So anytime, it's meant to be a living document and a creative space where you can put your ideas and projects. And so we have projects up there now that have been done in the past, but if you end up doing one of these Build a Better Book projects with your students and would like to submit those to be up on our website, that would be amazing as well.
All right. Well, thanks all for joining us. And Rachel, thank you so much for sharing what you and your students have done this past year. It's really inspiring to see.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
All right. Well, we'll get this recording as well as the other resources from Rachel's presentation up on our website. So if you want to check out any of those forums she suggested or some of those other resources, you'll be able to find them there.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much, John. We look forward to hearing what you pull
I'll
together for your course. That's great. All right. That's great. We look forward to seeing you.
See ya.
Take care.
You
Bye,
too.
everyone.
Bye-bye.